SBN, Sports Business Now. SBN is a division of Row 27, the digital sports marketing company, celebrating 5 years of creating TV spots, intro videos, and microsites for over 150 teams. See our work at row27.com. And by FanMaker, digital marketing tools for sports teams, featuring FanMaker Rewards, the most comprehensive and popular fan loyalty and reward system. Learn more about our apps at fanmaker.com. Sports Marketing Now.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Sports Marketing Now. I'm Holly Koski, and Sports Marketing Now examines all of the latest news from the sports marketing world. And today we have Juan Delaroca of the Mexican Ski and Snowboard Federation and our very own Max Huber. Max, Juan, how are you guys doing?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Juan, you're in snowy Colorado, correct?
That is correct. I live in Denver, where we actually got some snow in the last couple days.
Well, we're feeling the same thing. The sun finally came out here. It's what seems like forever. So
it's I feel like we're trapped in Groundhog's Day.
Yes.
It just keeps going and it never ends.
Agreed. And so the Mexican Ski and Snowboard Federation, probably not a lot of people know what it's all about. I, for one, did not. Juan, do you want to tell us a little bit what it is and your role there?
Okay, yeah, it is definitely something that's fairly new. It's only been started in the last couple of years. The Mexican Olympic Commission has had a ski representation since 1980, and they've slowly built up a ski team. They've not sent very many athletes. Here's actually a nice little piece of trivia. 1928 was the first year that Mexico actually sent a delegation to the Winter Olympics.
Oh, wow.
And it was in bobsledding. But of course, you know, they're not known as a winter sports country, but there has been an affinity for winter sports for a long time. And you're starting to see it emerge through now what is now the snowboard program. They actually did send an athlete in 2010 to Vancouver. They were 52 years old, actually. So the idea was to get younger, become more, attuned with the demographics of snow sports, very young oriented, and snowboarding was a part of that. So that's how it all came about.
And are you more in like the marketing role, or what's your role within the organization?
So my role within the organization is essentially to run the entire snowboard program from the ground up and develop it, including, finding talent to be on the team, working with potential sponsors to support the team, to also just kind of creating the environment and the policies behind the program that'll give it long-term success.
Well, very cool. I know we met you in the offices last week, so glad you can be on the show, Juan. And the Masters just wrapped up, and obviously Adam Scott, the Australian, won. But, Angel Cabrera, who's Masters champion, another major champion as well, he was in the mix, and so is Sergio Garcia with a tied for 8 finish. And same with Gonzalo Fernandez-Castano, who is a top 20 finisher as well. Describe, the kind of Hispanic marketplace in the golf world, just because there's not a ton of them in there, but the ones that are on the PGA Tour are pretty good. And so kind of describe their impact.
Well, I think their impact's going to be really huge right now because in a lot of ways, what you're seeing with guys like Cabrera and Garcia is, early adopters, the ones that are kind of, becoming at the forefront of the sport from a Hispanic point of view and being the ones that are going to be able to introduce others via their stories, via their performance and success on the golf course about what the sport means and what it entails to be involved in that sport and what it can do for you as far as a participant or even a competitor. I think it's going to be interesting because, I know PGA has established what they're calling their 2.0 strategy, which is going to be an idea around growing the sport of golf. I think since I believe it was in the early part of the 2000s, there were about 29 million golfers in the United States. And then by 2009, they had to drop to about 26 million. And a lot of people were either getting out of the sport, were just no longer interested, We're no longer connected to it. So the PGA of America has definitely made a big effort to grow the sport again. And it'll be really interesting because obviously, looking at population growth trends in the United States, it's not hard to see where you're going to potentially grow if you're looking to move from $20 billion worth of business to 40 billion by 2020, which is what I think they want to do. And they also want to increase participation numbers pretty significantly. And given what's happening again with population, I have a hard time believing it's not going to happen without the Hispanic equation at all.
I find it interesting that Juan mentions rebuild, just because there was a time back a number of years ago when you had Chichi Rodriguez of Puerto Rican descent, and he'd make the putt and then he'd do his sword slaying. You had Lee Trevino, born in Texas but of Mexican ancestry. So you had those two golfers that Hispanics could really grab onto back in the day. Not only were they on the tour, but those two were extremely dominant, some of the best players that the PGA Tour and a lot of these tournaments have ever seen. On the women's side, you had Nancy Lopez and Lorena Ochoa, both Hall of Famers that are just superior golfers.
Right.
But now to get this new breed in, Angel Cabrera's a little older, but the guy can play and he's fun to watch. You see him hit a shot and he'll start yelling something, and you think that it's a terrible shot, but it ends up being that he's just excited about it, or he's yelling at the ball. So I think it's great for the sport to see these people. It'd be awesome to see Sergio Garcia actually make a run at one of these major tournaments and win. But like Juan said, it's a huge demographic pool that you can reach into. So if they're able to find some of these golfers that they can latch onto, it could be extremely popular and also profitable at the same time.
Right. No,
Right.
I agree. I think it's a little surprising to me, at least, that TaylorMade, one of Sergio Garcia's main sponsors, really hasn't latched on to the Hispanic market in terms of trying to grow their brand to them, because Sergio's been pretty well known since Medina in '98, I want to say, when he had that epic run against Tiger and the whole leap and on the fairway. And so yeah, exactly like you said, especially with Lorena Ochoa on the women's game recently. Surprised that some sponsors really haven't latched on to them.
And I think a lot of it has to do too also with the athletes themselves when they want to do stuff like this. I think that really kind of helps sponsors get on board as well, or people who are in the business world to kind of understand it a little bit better. Because like for instance with Cabrera, the guy's got a great life story. It's the classic rags to riches that I think a lot of Hispanics can also identify with. The kid as a kid, he was growing up on the outside of a pretty privileged golf course in Argentina, and through his ability to kind of just charm people and get out on the course and become a caddy, that's how he kind of started his whole ascent into the sport. And I think that's a story that a lot of people can identify with. Anything that results in success, I feel like is something that people will definitely attach themselves to, want to learn more about, and be engaged by.
Right, and kind of along that same line as far as brands really tapping into the Hispanic marketplace, AT&T has done a great job with the MLS and the Mexican national team on the football side of sports. And they've actually renewed their sponsorship not only with the MLS and U.S. Soccer, but like I said, the Mexican Soccer Federation. And, they have title sponsorship to the MLS All-Star Game, and now the Rookie of the Year award. They're also the sponsor of the U.S. qualifier, which will be in Columbus, Ohio, this summer. And talk a little bit, Juan, about just kind of AT&T's presence in soccer, and especially with the Mexican Soccer Federation.
Well, it's really smart for AT&T to be involved in it because it is a passion point. There is no denying that, the sport of soccer resonates very strongly with the Hispanic market. I believe a third of all MLS fans right now in the United States are of Hispanic background. Obviously, the Mexican Soccer Federation, a lot of their games get broadcast here. Chivas is a very well-known international team. There's a lot of affinity associated with that. And I think it's for AT&T, it makes a lot of sense because of who they are as a brand. At the core, they're a communication company, and Hispanics are very expressive, and they like to talk about things, and being able to fuse with that soccer as well as the passion of sharing and being around others and communicating that passion around that sport, it makes a lot of sense for them to be involved in it. I also think that the interesting thing is when brands like AT&T or perhaps Coors, which is now part of the Mexican League as well, when they do these sponsorship deals with these Mexican soccer clubs and leagues, I really do see that as being a pretty strong play into the United States market. Yes, I think it does play well for them in the Mexican market as well, but I think for them it really does allow them to have that cultural cover, so to speak, to engage the Hispanic audience in an authentic way in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of brands definitely have a hard time with marketing to, the Hispanic marketplace. And, what do you think there's some ways, brands could really target them? I know you mentioned the passion that this fan base has, but how do you unlock the code, I guess, for a Hispanic marketing?
I think for a lot of people, it comes back down to what you could call cultural intelligence / research. I think, a lot of people within the business world probably, for lack of a better way of saying it, operate under perceived ways of looking at the Hispanic market. I hate throwing that word stereotype, but I think kind of fits here because you kind of have these reinforcements from a media standpoint for several years as to what Hispanics were supposedly into, what they ate, what kind of music they listened to. But the reality is we're in this age of now of what we call the cultural mashup, where a lot of Hispanics in the United States are living in two worlds. They're absorbing both, they're mixing and matching things, and they're making the world palatable to them. And so I think a lot of it has to do is understanding that and the nuances that are associated with that and how that can play into whatever it is, your product or service that you're trying to engage the audience with.
Right. Definitely. Good stuff. Max, do you have anything to add on Hispanic marketing?
I think Juan covered quite a bit of it. It's a huge population that you want to reach out to. We talked about the affiliation with MLS US and Mexican soccer a couple weeks ago, might have been last week with the tequila brand. And I mean, it's just in the competitive market of telecommunications, AT&T has to do something. I mean, they've already got some of these great commercials that people saw during the college basketball tournament and beyond, but this is another way for them to reach a very large population of people, not just Mexican soccer fans, but also just soccer fans in general in the U.S. So I think they're on the right path.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're being very aggressive and, smartly so. So moving on now to NASCAR. This weekend was the NRA 500. That's the National Rifle Association 500. Very controversial in terms of the NRA sponsoring a NASCAR event, and which was at the Texas Motor Speedway, so kind of right in the heart of the NRA's wheelhouse in terms of fan base or supporters. Max, this is definitely one of your topics in your wheelhouse. Talk a little bit about, is this good marketing for NASCAR to be associated with such a polarizing organization?
It's interesting just because of the fact that NASCAR has always allowed the tracks to work on their own sponsorship deals. I mean, there's always been the all-around sponsors, but they've always said, you know what, you guys can go out, you can find your own sponsors. We're not going to put a monopoly on it. We're not going to tell you who's going to be your sponsor. So they do have that freedom. It's just with all of the gun issues that have come up, obviously it's a sensitive issue to some, but Gossage, the president at Texas Motor Speedway, came out and said it's not a political statement. When it comes down to it, it's about the money, and that's that's the most important thing to these tracks. They have a lot of empty seats nowadays. They have some sponsors that have left the sport, so they need to do everything that they can to bring that sponsorship in. There's been some controversial sponsors in the past. Obviously, like I said, at this time, this one just kind of hits a chord. But like you mentioned, with Texas Motor Speedway, it's in their wheelhouse. The winner of the race gets a 10-gallon hat, and they get a couple 6-shooters. They shoot in the air. They're shooting blanks. But being a NASCAR fan, I don't have an issue with it most of the time. the race sponsor, I think about it for a few seconds, but when it comes down to it, I'm more interested about the drivers themselves.
Right.
So that's the most important thing to me. So I could see where both people come from, but for me, I don't have too much of an issue with it.
Juan, what are your thoughts?
Well, initially thinking about it, is really the person that's going to a NASCAR completely out of the demographic of who the NRA really wants to attract and speak to?
Right.
I mean, it's hard to say that that's not necessarily the case here, and to say that they're, wrong for trying to engage who at the end of the day would be their supporter in a venue that actually makes sense for them.
Right, and the irony of the event is, though, unfortunately, a man actually committed suicide due to a gunshot wound, self-inflicted gunshot wound at the race. So definitely not the type of publicity that NASCAR is looking for. But, like you said, it's a sports marketing ploy, regardless of the sponsor.
And one of the other things is that, no matter what it is, this does get NASCAR's name in the media, being, they're not the NBA, they're not the NFL. They are, in some people's minds, lower down on the pecking order for sports. It gets them up there. For people that are hardcore NRA people or hardcore NASCAR people, they're going to say, hey, this is my sport. I like it no matter what. And then you brought up the self-inflicted gunshot wound. It's just...
It can happen anywhere.
Yeah,
it's ironic.
It's a very ironic situation. NRA sponsor, this happens. Unfortunately, stuff like that does happen. But, when it comes down to it, it's a NASCAR race. You have a winner, and it's a 1 week thing, and now they're on to the STP 500. So
right.
It's out of sight, out of mind now.
Exactly. But moving on to our final topic, and actually kind of a lighthearted way to end the show a little bit. There was a 3D holographic by Nike, which, advertised their new Nike Freeze shoes. On the streets of Amsterdam, you can kind of see this video here. It is absolutely amazing. It's a hologram of their, this Nike shoe. And it's a dancing shoe within a box, but it's in what's called a holocube, which means the shoe appears suspended in space and seems to move at its own volatility. And, you can go on each side of the, I guess...
The box,
yeah. And it'd be totally transparent. So holograms, first came Tupac at the Kanye West concert, but this could really be a new form of advertising. What are your thoughts on using a hologram here, Juan?
Well, I'm a fan of projection mapping. I think it's pretty cool. In a lot of ways, I might think of it as kind of new age graffiti. I mean, obviously you can't go out and graffiti things. However, with these projection mapping type of advertising promotional projects, you can really, do some creative things and express yourselves in the same way that, a graffiti artist might, without actually inflicting that, damage to public property, private property, and it's, something that's there and then gone. So, and I think that makes it kind of memorable too. I think people look for things that leave an impression, and, holographic / projection mapping type of stuff does that. So.
Yeah, I would say it would leave an impression if I was just walking down the street and see this dancing shoe that, so it's showing you what it can do. It can really just curl up into a ball, which is a great way to show the shoe's capabilities. Max, your thoughts?
I like it. It'll be interesting if they can take this technology and really expand on it. When you look at this, it's small. It's you're gonna have to walk up to it. Yeah, I mean, from a ways away, you might see it and be like, "Oh, what's this?" You're intrigued. Especially with the age of digital billboards, where you can have things switching like that. If there was a way to make this technology so much bigger, so that no matter where you're at, you're not going to see the back of a billboard. The front, you're going to just see this image.
Right.
I think it's great, though. Like Juan said, it's going to attract your attention. It's going to attract your eye, and you're going to be intrigued to find out what it is. Once you see it, you're going to be like, oh, this is pretty cool. It's like Disney just took over Nike shoes and is doing the dancing shoe here. It's pretty neat. Like I said, I'd like to see where it kind of goes and how it expands, being on a small scale here. At major sporting events, this could be a great marketing tool.
Right, and leave it to Nike to, explore the new platforms of projections and holograms, and definitely can see this at a major event, probably in the near future.
Yes.
It's already being talked about, no doubt about it. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of different people in the creative advertising world, and I've heard very similar things being discussed. So it's definitely coming down the pike and fast. And I've noticed it and seen it over the last year. And I think even Adidas has also done some stuff with it in the last couple of years. So.
Yeah, it makes sense for brands such as Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, that especially when they're trying to incorporate tech into their brands. Really cool stuff. So
I think if you really. Oh, sorry, Juan. I was going to say, I think if you really want to get to the core of people, you make this a food and beverage-related one, too. Because if I'm walking down the street and I see a nice, thick burger and a tall glass of beer, I'm going to probably go find the nearest place available that sells that, and that's where I'm going.
Right.
Boom. That's just me. I don't know.
No, but, and I think you take it a little bit step further. If you do it in a way that's entertaining, because that's what people really remember about anything that's an ad or a promotion, is whether or not it entertained them. And I think this is definitely a world where you can meld that entertainment aspect into an actual marketing platform.
Absolutely. Well, Juan, thank you for joining us and shedding some light on Hispanic marketing, especially with the Masters and now this new AT&T renewal. So thanks for joining us. Thank you, Max.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me. Enjoyed it.
No problem. And thank you for joining us. We will see you on Thursday for Sports Business Now. And you can always find us on Sports Business Now or at SB Now on Twitter. Thanks a lot, and see you next week.
SBN, Sports Business Now.